Hi guys, today we'll be doing chapter 7, getting data from RESTful APIs with hooks. So in this chapter, we will see how to call back in services to get data from RESTful APIs with the Axios library. So it's gonna be Lucky and I will be driving and navigating together.
Yes. So when we are building RESTful APIs, it's so when build so building RESTful APIs is beyond the scope of React because React is client-side technology and RESTful APIs are server-side technology, and they require things like Node.js, ASP.NET, Ruby on Rails, and so on. So we're going to illustrate by connecting to the already existing GitHub RESTful API to retrieve and manage GitHub content, right? And there's the link there for that API, and the content is going to come to us in JSON format, just like this. And so when we are getting the data, we to get the data using a RESTful API, we are going to use the Axios library. So Axios is a promise-based HTTP client for the browser and Node.js, and we use it to make AJAX calls to the server. Axios provides the get method for getting a resource, post for creating it, patch for updating it, delete for deleting it, and head for getting metadata regarding a resource. We will illustrate using Axios to get data from a RESTful API in the following code example. So as you can see here, this is the function that we have here, the GitHub function, right? And inside of it, we start using the get method on that, and then we're just going to log our results to the console, right? So this code in use effects will return the GitHub data from our API endpoint, and we will later explain the what's use effect and what its usage is. But first, we need to dwell into the code inside of use effects. So to call our API endpoint, we need to use the Axios library, and to be able to do that, we first need to install it. Then we are going, after running npm install Axios, we are going to go to github.js, and we're going to import it using that line import Axios from Axios there on our line number 2 in our code. So when we use axios.get, we call the GitHub API with argument Greg, right? Axios.get returns a promise which we need to subscribe to, right? And this is what it looks like. So when we run our app, right, this is the code that we have, and our requested JSON object will be a single object containing any items array of size 30, with each item representing the data of a GitHub user, right? And then when we want to store those results in the state, right, after we've made a successful connection to our API, we'll have a state variable to store our results instead of just logging them to the console. So this will let us be able to display the results to the user. So to do that, we're going to have to add the following code. We, on top of importing use effects, we are going to include use state from React, and right, we're going to import use state, and then we are going to set our data and set data into our use state, right, with that empty array. And then we're going to declare the state variable data. Data is set to an initial value of an empty array, so you see a variable in state can be set to any type: string, array, boolean, integer, object, right? And then in the callback function, instead of logging it to the console, we're going to change that, and we're going to use the state setter set data to assign the results to data. So the empty array in the second argument of use effect, it it removes the second argument and then reruns our app, right? So what happens when we do that? It's going to result in a serious consequence because we will get an infinite loop. So in use effect, we have set data, and this causes use effect to be called again, which calls set data again, and this repeats over and over in a never-ending network request, right? So we, with the empty array in the second argument, use effect is called only once when the component first renders, right? And we're going to add a state property search term to store a search term entered by the user with the following code here, right? Adding that search term into our function, and then we'll append search term to our URL, and then we specify search term in the array of the second argument. With this, we are saying that the use effect should be called when the component first renders, and we'll set the second argument back to an empty array. We'll pass on to Sharon now to tell us more about the loader icon.
So now, while getting the content from a server, it is often useful to use a loading icon, as you can see the bubbles one below here. So is loading will be true when loading of results from the server is going on. We set it to true in the beginning. We also set search terms initials value to the specified name of a certain GitHub account. So next in the then method, set is loading to false because at this point we get the result from the server and loading is finished. Lastly, in return, we add a div that shows the loading icon. We use the if double ampersand conditional to make the div visible only when the component is loading. So we use the npm install react loading to load our what are these things again? Our loader icons. Then back to github.js, we import the React loading with the statement that you see here below. And then now we will be moving to implementing a GitHub results display page. So we want to render our GitHub user date nicely. In return, we use the in return method, we use the React Bootstrap media object component from the link over here as what we have done previously for the product component. And then lastly, we import the media component. Then we use map to repeat the media object for each user data we get for GitHub from GitHub. Then add JavaScript JSX expressions wrapped in curly brackets inside the template, the user's ID, HTML, URL, avatar URL, and login. Finally, we display our data by including list user in our return template. Then we move over to adding an input to GitHub results display page. So now we are currently hard coding our search term to the username in our request to GitHub. We will now make use of our search term statement so that a user can type in her search terms and retrieve the relevant search results by appending search term to our URL and specifying our search term in the array of the second argument so that the use effect is called each time search term changes. So if we go to our VS Code, we are going to see that over here. No, we were supposed to do that over here, but I think we'll do it in a while. So now, what we do first in is to encapsulate our Axios uh, related code into a separate function, which will be called both by use effect and submit. And because no call to GitHub is made at the beginning now, we initialize is loading to false at first as shown below. Once the user submits the form, we set is loading to true just before the call of axios.get to show the loading icon. We thus implement handle submit as the what we've showed here below. And then once we are notified of results from the GitHub request, we set is loading to false in set data to hide the loading icon. Then if we move over, we run our app, and this is the results that we're going to get after we type Greg into our search bar. Then we're going to move to refactoring get data to use a sync and await. We really did not implement these two today, but we will use them in another time. So once we use the await keyword, everything reads like asynchronous code. Actions after the await keywords are not executed until the promise resolves, meaning the code will wait. And if we use await, we have to add a sync to the function declaring that it is making the request as an asynchronous function. So in this chapter, we learned how to implement a GitHub user search application by connecting our React app to the GitHub RESTful API using Axios promises, component lifecycles, and displaying a loader icon. So I'm just gonna run this quickly and show y'all. how exactly it works. Okay. So yeah, so this is my name. Okay. And then I'm just gonna try Lucky's name and I'm gonna search and here we go. We've got different types of GitHub users with the name Lucky. And this means basically our data is being fetched actually. And then if I choose to search for Greg, the one that was used in the book, and we click our search button, and here is our loader, and this is what we get. So I believe it's working. I don't know, Lucky, would you want to add anything?
No, I have nothing to add. I think it's working well.
Okay, thank you guys. See you in the next video.
Bye bye.